So to get deeper into the waters, right, we're delighted to welcome here in studio Mr. Jonnathan Horonof, the international spokesperson for the Israeli mission to the United Nations and the author of Unveiled Inside Iran's Women, Life, Freedom, Revolt. Thank you very much, Mr. Horonof, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So how is this message by the Israeli premier being received among Iranians, this method of direct communications with the Iranian people themselves? Is it hitting a spot?
I think these kinds of messages resonate very deeply with the people of Iran. They've come to the conclusion over the past 46 years that their regime does not care about them. It hasn't done so for many occasions, which is why they've risen up so many times in 2009, 17, 18, 19, 2022, 2023, and right before the 12-day war with the massive trucker protests. Mm-hmm. I think the very interesting thing that we're seeing is that these protests are happening with much greater frequency. But with something like water shortage crisis, which affects the entire, almost all 31 of Iran's provinces, and where the president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, is saying that you could reach a point by September or October where Tehran could run out of water, action has to be taken. And the Islamic Republic instead is not taking sufficient action and is investing more in a very dangerous foreign policy and throwing baseless accusations at Israel for engineering this water crisis.
There is an accusation that Israel is behind the water shortage,
Rather than taking this issue seriously, which is affecting the lives of millions of Iranians, they're busy entertaining these wild dreams.
Dismissing it as this Israeli plot. Well, this takes us to the greater issue that you've mentioned, this very evident divide between Iranians and their regime. But as counterintuitive as it may sound, how frequent those uprisings then also mean that they're not reaching this culmination point that is bringing about a political change. So to an extent, is the regime getting stronger or weaker by these constant demonstrations?
Right now, the regime is weakened militarily as a result of the 12-day war, and a tendency that tends to happen after these military encounters is that the regime takes it out on the people of Iran. So they launch unrelenting brutality, repression, arrests. But the people of Iran are very resilient, proud, extraordinary and courageous people, and they're going to continue to rise up because their lives are at stake. This is beyond politics, beyond ideology. This is their socio-economic well-being, and they're not going to give up on that.
So I will try to be careful in phrasing it, but how can Israel not utilize the situation, but rather try to see it as an opportunity to take the relationship with the Iranian people to the next level?
I think that's probably the rationale behind these kinds of messages that you just showed. The idea that you're sending a communication directly to the people of Iran to make it clear that any conflict, any issue that Israel has is not with the people of Iran, the 90+ million people, most of whom don't have an issue with the West, with America, with Israel, but it's more with the Islamic Republic that has for the past 46 years been hell-bent on annihilating the state of Israel, on destroying the United States. But the point of the message was to say that the people of Israel stand with the people of Iran in their quest for freedom.
And you've mentioned the Iranian president short days ago. We've heard quite unique speech of him, I would dare to say, especially when we're talking about his liberal take on the hijab, saying that the hijab cannot be forced on anyone. And this brings us directly to the topic of your recently published book, Unveiled.
We've seen similar statements be made by him before, right during the thick of the Women, Life, Freedom protest movement. He also made similar statements made the message that the morality police perhaps shouldn't have this kind of authority that they have. But the reality on the ground in Iran is that the president doesn't have an awful lot of power and authority. So he may be able to make these public statements, but behind the scenes, they don't carry much weight because either he doesn't have the sort of power to carry out these rules, or any statement that he makes will be refuted by someone within the clerical leadership's inner circle or by the supreme leader, and we've seen that time and again. So he may say one thing, but in the reality on the ground may be very different.
Yeah, and we're a few years after this truly groundbreaking grassroots protest, the one that followed the Masha Amini death, that really triggered a very clear-cut reaction by the Iranian people, but not to the point in which it created a political change.
It was extraordinary in many ways, first and foremost because it was led by women and supported by men who had simply had enough. It ultimately didn't reach its goal of regime change. But
this is what your book is about, right?
That's what the topic of Unveiled is about. It was the culmination of 3 years of interviews with Iranians inside Iran and in the diaspora, talking about their experiences in the regime and their hopes for a post-Ayatollah Iran, as opposed to, outside observers.
Yeah.
And it coincided very much so with the 12-day war and all of that talk about a possible future for Iran.
So when we take a deeper look to history, we're always compelled to draw some lessons to the future. So if Unveiled can be summed up with some main takeaways as we look ahead, what will it be?
I think the fundamental takeaway from the book Unveiled is that the people of Iran are extraordinary people, and they're very different to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Mm-hmm. They want to have greater relations with the outside world for their own future, and that we should be supporting the people. We should be standing proudly with them. And we should be supporting them not just in expressions of support, but also by Western governments distancing themselves from the Islamic Republic, from imposing the sanctions that, in the UN Security Council, for example, with the snapbacks looming, taking those seriously and applying real pressure on a regime that definitely doesn't care about Europe, about the West, and also doesn't care about its own people.
Yeah, so the pressure from within must be complemented with the pressure from the outside. Jonnathan Horonoff, thank you so very much for coming to our studios today. Thank you very much. Right, now it's